sound of redemption. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. Igniting the fire within you. Exalting the melody of freedom. These are the things that will bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Down, down, down.
Let me tell you, it's in the air. Joy is in the air. Love is in the air. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Don't sleep on it, brother. You might get left, sister. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Justice. No need to be counted, cause I am down. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Down for the end of racism, for the end of bigotry, cause I am down. For the end of misogyny, that's right. For all the isms out there, just down, down, down. Let's bring it down. Rise up, people. No more foolishness, and let's bring it way down.
Riding the river of change into the cries of contrition. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. We are the children of Eden, dancing and celebrating freedom. We are the ones that must bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. We've got to bring it down. Down. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout. Rise together.
Accountability starts now. The Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Yeah. Rise up. Stand up, shouting loud.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up.
There's only one way to be free. equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. If you can't take it, you don't deserve it. Nobody can give it to you. I'm for anybody who's for freedom. I'm for anybody who's for justice. I'm for anybody who's for equality. I'm not for anybody who tells me to sit around and wait for mine.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Eric Dawson radio show. Please hit the share button. We're live on YouTube. Go visit it if you haven't already. Hit the share button, hit the bell, do all of those things. Listen, we are in unprecedented times in our lives. And a lot is being revealed right now. I'm spending an inordinate amount of time debating here in my own home, debating with my family outside of this home, and then debating on social media and on the phone with friends and loved ones and associates as we try to figure out exactly how to deal with this. But common sense at some point should prevail in some instances as we even seek to find out more information. And it eludes me as to why there are those who are intentionally spreading misinformation that they know will be harmful to those who are most vulnerable in our community. You know, one of the things that I try to start with here is an understanding of the collection of people in our community, local and at large. And they're just some very simple facts. And some of those facts are, that's great. So we're going to have a caller. We're going to have Lori Endicott Thomas call in. She just confirmed that she's going to call in. Great. So she's going to call in. And what we need to do is we may have some basic instincts about some things, but we need to rely on those who have, for the better part of their life, researched, written, been involved in this arena, right? And that's what I did. So I'm glad that she's able to call in and shed some light on some things, because again, we can go back and forth with one another. I feel this way, I feel that way, but what does the data say? What does it suggest? And at the end of the day, isn't that what we ought to be? Isn't that the thing that we ought to let guide us? I know that we live in a world where seeds of doubt have been sown, and sometimes over our entire lifetime through conspiracy theories that we've heard, been exposed to. But at some point, we have to anchor ourselves in something. Somebody posted on a thread that in Sweden, I think it is, that they don't have the lockdown that we have. And that exists within many other countries. And as I was reading the article, and I don't know the truth of it, but in reading the article, what they said was that they believe that the folks there in Sweden have the capacity to exercise common sense. That somehow they've elevated beyond the immature level that a lot of other countries are at. And you have to wonder if that is the case. So if they are told, hey, listen, there's something that's dangerous outside, you need to kind of distance yourself, you need to stay apart from each other, you need to do those things, that they believe that their people will just do that. We've been told that part of the way that we can fight this thing is through social distancing, common sense. Just, look, this is how it travels, and by staying away from one another. Hey, Lori, hold 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. By staying away from one another, just by what they call it, self-quarantining or sheltering in place, or staying 6 feet away, that these things could help slow the spread. It could help flatten the curve, and it could mitigate the damage done. That we just throw caution to the wind and we say, no, we're going to hold coronavirus parties. That we're going to just go and enjoy spring break, and, we want to, I just don't understand it. And the report that I read today now suggests that, there'll be somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 deaths before this is all over. And that report also says that if we did nothing, that the deaths could be in the millions. So with an opportunity to do something very simple, which is just kind of, if you love me, stay away from me. Right? Just stay away from me for a little while. And I'll stay away from you for a little while. But then we'll be able to come back together once this thing settles and be okay. One of the other things that I saw, and I disagree with him on most things, and this is Mayor Ras J. Baraka in Newark. But the thing that I do agree with is that there needs to be a shutdown in the city of Newark. That too many people, not most, but still too many, are just ignoring the warnings. And they are a health hazard. And because I have family members who live in Newark, I want them protected. And so if it means citations, if it means tickets, if it means jailing those people who are presenting themselves as health hazards, then I recommend he do that. And for the people who, are criticizing him for that, I don't understand it. I really don't understand. I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too. We have to make some decisions about what it is that we want. And for me, I want the majority of the people who can survive this thing to survive it. But it requires us listening. And I posted something, and then I'll bring Lori Endicott Thomas on. I posted something on my page. Yeah, we live in a democracy, right? And we have freedoms. And so some of the freedoms that people have is the freedom to be stupid. But at what cost to the rest of us? Welcome, Lori. How are you? Are you there? Oh, she'll be.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, sorry about that. I hit my phone on mute so you wouldn't get any background noise.
No, that's okay. How are you doing today? Are you, how are you doing today? I'll just leave it there.
I'm still on the green side of the grass. What more can you ask for?
And so am I, Lori. And, and prayers go out to all of those who aren't, and to their family members. This isn't a reality TV show. This is real. This is forever changing the lives of tens of thousands, if not millions of people across the globe. And we have to take it more seriously. So, Lori, as you see, and here's the first thing I want to start with. I had a discussion with Amina today, and she's been arguing, and she affectionately calls me Baba. So she says, "Baba, put a mask on. You got to put a mask on." Well, I don't go out. I don't go out anyway, right? But when I was, visiting clients, she would say, "Put a mask on." And everything that I was reading was saying that it was detrimental to put a mask on. Everything. And what I try to do is literally, I'll read one thing and then I'll literally go to an opposing site or blog to see how they're addressing what I just read. And then I'll try to read about 6 or 7 more sources to try to glean from them, what the best next step is. But what I was getting was that wearing these masks for a person who doesn't believe that they're infected, and I want to underscore that for a minute, right? Put a pin in believe they're not infected. To wear a mask could, one, be a false sense of security. Two, it could actually trap the particles of the virus inside the mask, creating a greater hazard for the person who's wearing the mask. But then I was, and she's been pushing this for the better part of a week. Wear a mask, wear a mask, wear a mask. And so as I'm in the bathroom, and I shaved myself this morning. I try to clean myself up because a lot of folks on Friday said that I was looking out of sorts. But anyway, as I was shaving, she said, "Baba, come in. I want you to listen to this." And you had Dr. Fauci and you had some other people on, and they were saying that they're rethinking whether or not folks should wear the mask, and what the original reason for saying it, whether part of it was about the detriment that one could cause to themselves, plus the false sense of security. They were also saying that part of it was that there was a short supply of PPEs, and maybe that was part of the motivation. But they further said today that common sense may be, if there's enough masks for everybody, along with social distancing, along with sheltering in place, if everybody wore a mask, that evidentially you may be able to slow the spread. Your thoughts?
My thought is I would go with whatever Dr. Fauci says.
You know what? I'm tending to agree, which is why I brought it up today. Because prior to him mentioning it on the show today, he was part of the group that was saying no mask. Right.
Again, I'm not an expert on infectious disease. My skill set is explaining complicated things. So what I would do, for practical advice, I would go to the people who are the real experts, and that would be the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists. The anti-vaccine people have been spreading all sorts of nonsense about the CDC. But it's thanks to the CDC that we don't have epidemics of tuberculosis in the United States. We don't have epidemics of malaria. Those diseases are common in other countries. You don't see them here. So, and I'm sorry, there's a poodle in my house.
No worries.
She may bark. I can't control her. So yeah, I would take their advice on these things. Now, a lot of people are just perplexed about the whole situation that's going on. What is an epidemic? She barked. What is this thing? This epidemic quarantine. They need to put this in some kind of perspective. And if you're home, if you have time on your hands, and you really want to educate yourself, there is a course on. It's one of Yale University's online courses where all the lectures are online. You can watch them for free, and they have one on epidemic diseases, and it talks about the history of epidemic diseases and how they've been handled throughout history. Like the word quarantine came from, it's called Epidemics in Western Society since 1600, and it's open Yale courses. So you go to oyc.yale.edu, and you can just listen to this series of lectures from a course at an Ivy League university that explains how societies have dealt with epidemics through the ages. Things like smallpox and cholera and whatnot. So, this is, if you really want to get an understanding of, what this means to society. So the current respiratory pandemic that we're dealing with is something that the experts have been warning us about for a very long time, because the what we normally do to prevent diseases is we clean the water supply to prevent the diseases that are spread by feces. So this would include things like cholera and typhoid fever. If you look at the causes of death in the United States from the year 1910, you'll see that there were a lot of, cholera and typhoid were among the top causes of death back then. So this started to change when they started having public water systems. And for example, Newark had terrible, terrible problems in the late 19th century with these, diseases that are spread by what they call fecal oral contact. So people would use an outhouse in their backyard, then they would draw water from a well, and their well water was contaminated by feces from from their neighbors' outhouses. So that's why the city of Newark went to great expense to buy that 35,000 acres out in the Highlands to for the reservoir and build piping systems to bring the water into Newark. That's why Newark has such a beautiful water supply. Newark's water supply is wonderful, but the problem that we've had recently, I don't live in Newark, but the problem that's been in Newark recently with the water quality is because of the pipes that go from the city's pipes into people's homes. So, but to control the diseases that are spread, from your intestines, the things that infect your intestinal tract, you have to clean up the water supply. You have to get clean water, and you have to treat it. So so that was a big thing. And when those diseases were controlled, when they got the control of the water supply, then it had an unintended effect of increasing outbreaks of polio, because polio is one of those diseases that can be spread, and usually is spread by water contaminated by sewage, but it can also be spread from person to person by contact, because it can infect the respiratory tract as well. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until after you started having clean water in big cities that you started having outbreaks of polio among older children. And it used to be that babies would get their first exposure to polio when they were little tiny babies. And at that time, they were protected by their mother's antibodies, because the antibodies from breast milk would be in the intestine. They would get, they would get the infection, the polio infection, and this would give them enough chance to develop, some natural immunity. But there were still a lot of cases. That's why they called it infantile paralysis. It would hit babies, and it would usually hit them so hard they would just stop breathing, and people didn't know why. All of a sudden the baby just died. Nobody really knew why. But it was after they started cleaning up the water. Sorry, I got to contain this poodle. She's not my dog, so I'm just dog sitting. So she. So then they started having these outbreaks of polio in older children. After the water supply became clean. So that's when you needed to develop a vaccine, because a vaccine is the only effective way to prevent a disease that is transmitted easily from person to person. And the person who really led, who provided the leadership in developing the polio vaccine was President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, because he was struck down by some form of paralysis. Everybody thought it was polio, but it was probably Guillain-Barré syndrome when he was already an adult. And so they would hold a ball for his birthday, and then people started using that to raise awareness and funds to fight polio. And then as a result, that created one of the fundraising things. It was in the depths of the Depression. People said, well, people don't have any money, but everybody has a dime, so let's send our dimes marching to Washington to raise money to develop, to find a vaccine or a cure for polio. So they so that created the March of Dimes, and it was a big fundraising effort that ultimately led in the development of the vaccine that is currently wiping polio off the face of the earth.
Right.
So so the problem that we have with COVID-19 is that it's not waterborne, or maybe it could be, but that's not how it's being spread mainly. It's mainly being spread by droplets that people produce when they cough, or even tinier droplets that people produce when they just breathe or speak. And these airborne pathogens, there are some bacteria, there are some viruses that are spread by the air that infect your respiratory tract. The only effective way to really knock down the numbers of that is by vaccination, and we don't have a vaccine yet. So the anti-vaxxers are continually telling me, well, they don't test these vaccines before they go on the market. Well, that's nonsense. If that were true, then we'd have a vaccine. Then people would be selling COVID vaccines already. But there isn't one there isn't one that's been tested and shown to be safe and effective. So when one does come out, it'll knock down it'll put an end to the epidemic. So that's why we're in this situation now, because all of us breathe. There are diseases that can be spread by the droplets we produce when we breathe, talk, or cough, and the experts on infectious disease have been warning us about this for a long time. We should just be thanking our lucky stars that this has a mortality rate that's not on the order of 60%. I mean, there are some diseases that, it's theoretical that you could have something that would have a major depopulation. And that they're always on the lookout for those. This one had a mortality rate that was low enough that it was harder to contain.
So, I got so it's very interesting. Even last night, and I was up late, just kind of going back and forth and wondering, what good it is, just engaging in these Facebook conversations, right? But because there are a lot of people who read my page, they don't always chime in, but I know they do read it, because there are times, like last night, I posted something and I don't know, it received over 100 and some shares and whatever.
Oh, that's great.
So sometimes people interact and sometimes people just read. So I'm always compelled to respond for the person who might read but not comment, right? So there was a question that was asked to me, and they said, there were a couple questions. One was comparing the reaction that we're having in terms of shutting things down and quarantining and social distancing and sheltering in place, the economy, the $6.2 trillion stimulus package that was signed, all of this happening over COVID-19, but they talked about the number of deaths that have occurred year after year when it comes to influenza. And the question was, if we have those number of deaths every year in influenza, and we've not even come close to that number of deaths as far as COVID-19 is concerned, why are we panicking so much?
Okay, well, the answer to that is wait. You want to see more deaths from this disease than from influenza? Just wait. You're at the beginning of a pandemic with a mortality rate that it's at least 10 times as high as the regular seasonal influenza. So that's why the public health authorities are panicking. And the idea that, we shouldn't worry about it, it's just the flu, that's an insult to all of the people who are working on trying to control flu. I mean, the reason that they have to, the reason that they go through the effort to develop a new, well, first of all, to develop a new, the influenza vaccine is new every year. And every year, these virologists struggle to figure out what is the strain that is most likely to be going around in the coming season. They have to make a guess. And then they have to develop an entirely new product based on that guess. And because the flu virus is a single-strand RNA virus, which means its genome is unstable. It mutates very quickly, and so and those mutations, don't impair its ability to infect you, but they do impair the body's ability to recognize it. So then there's the struggle of let's get as many people vaccinated with this new vaccine as possible. Because it does, a lot of people say, well, the flu vaccine doesn't work. I got the flu anyway. Well, the flu vaccine's purpose, and I've talked to people who, from World, I've over the years, I've talked to a lot of people about these things. And the people, the epidemiologists that I've talked to about this, I mean, they say, look, the purpose of the flu vaccine is not to prevent you from getting the sniffles. The purpose of the flu vaccine is to cut the death rate. And one of the ways it can do this is by even if the flu vaccine that you got is not a perfect match to the flu virus that just got into your system, if it's a reasonably close match, then you're going to have some partial protection. And if it's reasonably close match, then the cells in your body that make the antibodies, the genes that they use to generate the antibodies mutate very fast. It's called hypermutation. So they will be producing antibodies that vary. And the cells that are producing the antibodies that get the best match to whatever's going around, they are given preferential, they are supported by the body much more, so that your ability to fight whatever you just got exposed to evolves. And this is a process called affinity maturation. So if you had something that was kind of a close fit for close enough to attach a little bit, then the antibodies that you produce over the following days are going to get better and better and better at fighting that. So that's why we do the flu vaccine. And the idea that, this is just the flu, don't worry about it. It's like the flu is a major cause of death. Why, and the public health people are already, they already go to great lengths to fight it. So the idea that this is just the flu is nonsense. It's worse. And, the fact that it's 10 times the mortality of the regular flu should scare you.
Okay. And then the other thing that I tried to answer yesterday is the question was about it being transmittable. And the person likened it in terms of being transmittable to HIV. And I don't know if I was correct in how I answered them, but what I said to them was, as I understood HIV, it was a 1-to-1 transmission, right? So if I had it, I could transmit it to you through the exchange of bodily fluids. With COVID-19, because there is up to a 14-day period where you could be asymptomatic and socializing, as we are social animals.
And shedding virus, yeah.
Right, and so you're on a bus, you're on the subway, you're at a movie theater, you're in a supermarket line, you're at the mall, and so in that 14-day period that you're asymptomatic, but maybe carrying the virus, you're spreading it to a multitude of people potentially. And
That's correct.
I said there lies, to me, one of the big, there may be other differences, I said, but in terms of them being transmittable, one is transmitted this way, the other is transmitted that way, and it's exponential the rate at which you can transmit it in that 14-day period.
Well, the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of the symptoms that you get from an infection are not the direct effect of the infectious agent itself. A lot of those symptoms are the effects of your own immune system trying to fight the infection. So when the infectious agent, whether it's a virus or a bacterium or whatnot, when that gets into your system, and if it's a bacteria, the bacteria start to divide and make new copies of themselves, and the virus gets into your cells, and your cells start making new copies of the virus. When that starts going on, sometimes it kills the cells directly, and you might start to have some effects from that. But then when your immune system notices what's going on, when your adaptive immune system goes, or especially, it's the innate immune system, your basic all-purpose response to any foreign threat within the body, or to any injury or infection. When that starts to ramp up, you start to feel bad, and because some of the things that it does just don't feel good. But the fact that you don't feel good is of lesser importance to the fact that this is, whatever it is, could be a threat to your existence. So things like fever is actually part of the disease fighting system. So if you're having these symptoms, that means that your immune system is alert and is fighting it. Like a runny nose, for example. The runny nose is your nose's attempt to try to shed, is trying to clean itself. It's trying to get rid of this virus. But when it's getting rid of this virus, it means that, yes, it's getting rid of the virus. You're shedding it into the, you're shedding large amounts of it into the environment around you. So you can be infected and even shedding virus long before your immune system starts to make you feel sick. So even if you feel well, you shouldn't. You should be social distancing. Now, the classic example of this social distancing was a woman named Mary Mallon, and she was an Irish immigrant. She worked as a cook for some of these rich families out on the Gold Coast in Long Island, and the families where she worked were getting struck down with typhoid fever. And this was kind of a shocking thing, because by that point, typhoid fever was a disease of the poor. It was a disease of areas, where people didn't have access to clean water. And here were these families in these fancy houses that had the latest and greatest of everything, and they and their children were dying of typhoid fever. So the health authorities investigated this, and they found that there was this cook, and she had no symptoms. Well, then they said, well, stop cooking. So she went her merry way, and next thing you know, another rich family, people are starting to die of typhoid fever, and they say, well, what's going on here? And it's the same cook. So they say, they put her in prison. They put her in quarantine on some island in the East River, and to keep her from infecting more people. So they say, do you promise, pinky swear you're not going to cook for any more people? Because she wasn't washing her hands after she went to the bathroom. Then she'd cook food and the people get sick. And she said, she swore up and down she wouldn't do that. Next thing you know, she's working in the kitchen again, and people are dying of typhoid. So that's why they called her Typhoid Mary. So they eventually, she was quarantined for the rest of her life. And when she died, they did an autopsy, and they found that her gallbladder was just teeming with the bacteria that caused typhoid fever. So the social distancing is an important thing, even if you don't have symptoms, because you could be spreading the disease. Don't be Typhoid Mary.
So now I want to ask, in terms of how people should be looking at this, because more information is coming out every day, right? This is organic as it's happening because we've never dealt with it before. And I read a report where they're now talking about it living on the soles of your shoes and your clothing. I saw a commercial from a well-known pizza company. I think it was Little Caesars, it might have been, where last night they talked about the fact that the pizza coming out of the oven is a 500 degree oven, and at the point that they take it out, it's no longer touched, right? So they're actually now retooling their messaging to consumers in order to quell the concerns that folks may have about how things may get contaminated. They're talking about the porousness of cardboard boxes. And so here's another example. So Amina last night, she had pizza, but when the pizza came into the house, we have a sun porch, she removed it. She had gloves on. She opened the box, asked me to take the pizza out of the box and put it on a tray. She immediately discarded the box outside, so it never came into the house proper. Right, and then from being on the porch, she changed her shoes. Well, firstly, we don't wear outdoor shoes in the house, but she took the shoes off, sprayed them down with Lysol. I mean, there was this whole exercise. Is that weird? but but the question is, right? Because one might look and say, you know what, you're being overly paranoid. But is there such a thing as being overly paranoid?
I remember, many years ago, I was working for a publication, and I was working for a medical journal, and I had a cold, and I didn't want to share it. I still had to.
Vincent, I'm gonna ask you one second, Vincent. I'm gonna ask you to mute your phone because I can hear a whole bunch of noise in the background.
Oh, that's not me.
No, that's Vincent. Thank you, Vincent. Go ahead.
Okay. So the when is it? So I brought hand sanitizer into work, and I was, every time I would try to cough into my sleeve and so forth, and I kept using hand sanitizer all day long. Well, one of my coworkers, she was looking at that, and she's like, she saw the hand sanitizer on my desk, and her eyes got big as saucers, and she said, why do you have hand sanitizer? And I said, because I have a cold and I don't want to share it. And she said, oh, thank goodness. Or she said, well, you don't use this all the time, do you? And I said, well, no. I mean, I wash my hands occasionally, like a normal person, but, no, I'm not I don't continually use hand sanitizer. Well, it turns out her brother has obsessive compulsive disorder. And he would wash his hands till they bled, just on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's going way overboard, because he washed his hands so much that he was actually exposing his bloodstream to pathogens. So, that's crazy. But, taking your shoes off at the door sounds perfectly reasonable. Being cautious about things that other people have handled, that seems to me perfectly reasonable.
Okay. Vincent, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Brother Dawson.
Good morning.
Miss Lori.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Well, I've been listening to the show while I'm working. Really enjoying it.
Thank you.
Well, Eric, I called you for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Today is the last day to get my petition in. Now, I've gotten some great response from your
Well,
show.
I don't want to. But I don't want to. I want to stay focused on this topic. We can get to petitions. We can get to all that stuff. But what we're talking about now, because you're getting ready to take a hard left, right? And I want to keep the conversation where it is for the people who are in the feed who are commenting on what it is that we're talking about.
Oh, okay. No worries. When you're ready for the hard left, give me a call.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. So, so Lori, so the precaution of, and so here's where I am now, because I'm really rethinking a lot of it. In order to really deal with this thing, but the country's not ready for this, you need to almost have a complete shutdown. Right, because even stores, let's say that are that have moved to takeout only.
Yeah.
Right, the plastic bags, the plastic containers, the forks, the knives, the porous napkins, right, the cardboard, the paper plates, all of those things that are now coming, that are leaving that restaurant, that are coming into your house. You're taking a lot of risk. You're trusting and believing that the handlers of all of that, right? Firstly, don't have coronavirus. Two, that not only do they not have it, meaning that they're suffering respiratory issues or other kinds of things, or not, right? That they're asymptomatic, but that on their hands, they're not carrying those particles. And beyond that, that they're washing for the 20 seconds necessary after touching surfaces and all those kinds of things, that they're not sneezing into their hand. You're trusting all of that down the entire supply chain from a restaurant that you're doing takeout from. And then if you're order, I mean, how, I'm just trying to get a sense of how I don't know if paranoid is the word I want to use, but how cautious should we be? I see that, DoorDash and Uber Eats, for instance, in order for them to stay in business, these restaurants have to be in business. And so what Uber Eats and DoorDash are now saying is, we'll deliver for free, right? We just need to stay afloat. So we're supporting these restaurants that are providing takeout to you. But now, if you add the Uber Eats or the DoorDash person to the equation, right? Now you're talking about the preparation of the food, the bagging and packaging of the food, and then the transport of the food in a car that you don't know anything about, and then the entrance into your house.
Well, the thing to remember is that the coronavirus is not terribly stable outside the human body. It doesn't last very long outside the human body, which is why it's a recent thing. I mean, if it had been something that persisted in the environment for a long time, people would have caught it before now. I mean, it was probably picked up because of people eating some sort of wild animal, which, and eating an exotic wild animal, which is the dumbest thing you can do. As far as, I mean, from the novel infectious disease perspective, don't do that. But the coronavirus itself, because it's an enveloped virus, its outer coating is made out of oil. It doesn't last very long outside the environment, outside of the human body. So it's, as soon as it leaves the infected person's body, it's, tick, 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 its time's running out. The other thing is that in order for you to get an infection, you have to have an infectious dose. You have to have a high enough dose of this active infective agent that is delivered to the right tissue. So, I mean, if you got some of it on your elbow, nothing's going to happen. If you get something on your hands and then you wash it off your hands before you touch your face, nothing's going to happen. But if that virus makes its way into your mouth, your eyes, or your nose, then you get a large enough dose of it that it's like, it's like I mean, it's all probabilities. I mean, what's the probability that this is like a fire? I mean, if you have sparks, you know, I mean, one little tiny spark is not necessarily going to catch. So if you have a lot of sparks, the chances of something catching is higher. So if you maintain reasonable precautions, then chance is on your side. Time and chance are on your side if you take reasonable precautions.
Right. Okay. What else was there that I was? So when you hear the medical folks right now talking about 100,000, 200,000 deaths, and saying that that's getting off lucky. They're saying right now, if we do everything correctly from here on out, that they anticipate between 100 and 200,000 deaths. Given what you've seen so far in terms of the coronavirus parties and the, and all of the other things, in terms of folks just not wanting to comply. Where do you think? I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense, because I'm looking at it and it scares me. It scares me that, so for instance, there was somebody put up the numbers from, I think it was March 4th, which was one case identified in New Jersey to yesterday, which now is at 13,000 cases and probably climbed by the time we started the show today, right? And so we went on March 1st, so in a month, we went from one known case to 13,000 known cases. And people are still partying.
Well, the thing about these projections, and I've been reading lately about Stoic philosophy. It's an ancient Greek and Roman school of philosophy, and one of the things that they tell you in Stoic philosophy is the difference between the past, the present, and the future. The past is our memory. The past is our memory, and the future is our imagination. And all we have, the only time in which we can act and have any influence over events is the now. So, we really need to focus on people now, taking precautions now.
But don't you think that, so for instance, I'll use this as an example. I have had, because of ideological differences, an adversarial relationship with the mayor of the city of Newark, right? I disagree on so many levels in terms of what he's done, what his administration does, all these things. His handling of the water crisis in Newark, his lying to the people about how severe it was, all of those things, which I think, by the way, eroded confidence. So where he now is telling people after lying to them about that, right, and now he's talking to people about the urgency of self-distancing and sheltering in place. I think that folks are trying to make heads or tails over what's true, what's not true. But having said that, I can separate, based on all the information that I see, the need to be supportive of him and to leverage whatever trust I've gained with the folks who tune into this platform and who follow my social media feeds to say, hey, listen, in a lot of areas I disagree with him. But here I'm dissecting this thing with a scalpel and saying, look, I can still have those disagreements over there. But as relates to this specific thing, yeah, you need to shelter in place. Yeah, you need to heed the advice. Yeah, and to see that there's so many people, for political reasons, Lori, who not only on this local level, but if you're talking on a state level and then on a national level, they're still jockeying for political positioning. right? So where they're asking the American people to come together and unify, understanding that it is only through that, only through us caring about one another, not just caring about ourselves, right? But caring about how I might infect somebody else.
Right.
But go ahead.
Well, first of all, I don't want to criticize the current mayor at all about the water
No, I'm not
thing
asking
because,
you to.
I think he inherited a problem.
Yeah.
And he just walked into a situation which was, again, Newark's water supply is excellent. The problem is the pipes that people have in their homes.
Oh no, we understood that. I'm not trying to relitigate that now, but
I don't want to criticize the mayor or his performance in the water situation at all, because it's a really hard thing, and I don't think I would have done it. I wouldn't have been able. I wouldn't have been able to do a better job, to tell you the truth. But that being said, I mean, we really do need for people to listen to what the public health authorities are saying, and see if their elected leaders' advice and actions are in line with what the experts are saying. Because there are some people in some places where the mayor's like, oh no, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to continue to have parades or whatever. Go to your church services and stand elbow to elbow with all these coughing people. I mean, if you've got your elected officials saying, giving bad advice, that's a real problem. But if your elected officials' advice is in line with what the experts are saying, then you should follow what they're doing. If the experts say, shelter in place or whatever, and avoid, do social distancing and whatnot, and the mayor says, no non-essential businesses are should be open. Now there was I think it was Los Angeles, where they were going to cut the power and water supply to businesses that were defying that, non-essential businesses that were still staying open despite the quarantine measures, and people were angry about this. And it's like, well, how many people do they want to kill by keeping their business open?
So,
I mean,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we really, if the authorities are supposed to give us wise, they're supposed to take wise action that's based on what the scientists are telling them, and then if you're, we should all be doing what the scientists are telling us. And if the authorities are telling us to do something that's in line with that, we should definitely obey that.
So, do you believe in the end? I mean, because this is how I'm looking at it, at least, that we're walking a tightrope, a balancing act, right, of trying to mitigate the damage of COVID-19, but keep a functioning economy, right? And the question is, which supersedes which? And in fact, by damaging the economy, by irreparably damaging the economy, do we essentially do more harm long term to people? Meaning that, so you wind up with, you have the, whatever the fallout is of COVID-19, and you're counting these deaths that are directly contributed to the person acquiring the disease and then dying, right? But if you look after this is over, it's like the fallout, which may last a generation, right? Where because of lack of income, because of food insecurity, because of lack of housing, homelessness. So those people who wind up dying as a result of exposure to, cold weather, or die because of malnourishment or other kinds of things. But you trace it back that they're saying that the fallout might be more severe. So it's important to protect the economy.
Well, I take that with a huge tablespoonful of salt. I mean, the people who are saying that, what they're really saying is, I'm a rich person and I don't want my personal fortune to be diminished in any way as the result of this. I think our first focus should be on keeping people alive, and then and then after this emergency is over, then we'll make sure that we take care of people's their other needs. And our society is not really set up to take care of people's needs, and maybe it should be.
Well, but that's what I'm getting at. That this is really uncovered a lot, right? Because part of taking care of people's needs right now is, and we saw this stimulus package, but part of taking care of people's needs is making sure that they have food,
right?
Right. But we're not even set up to ensure that everybody has food.
Well, the population, the voting population, has just got to vote for people who are going to take care of people instead of taking care of plutocracy.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got ruled by the rich. That's plutocracy. We don't have democracy, and we don't have democracy because people aren't insisting on it.
We just took another caller in. Caller, go.
Hey, good morning, guys. This is Darren. How you both doing?
Good morning, Mr. Martin. How are you?
Doing well,
today?
thank you.
Mr. Martin, I saw you. Great conversation. Yeah, I texted you to come on to the show because I saw the other day that you were compelled to go to your Facebook Live because of all of the misinformation that's being put out there that is leading people to be reckless.
Yeah, it's scary. And both of you did a great job of covering some of that. I'm like you, like Eric. I'm an information junkie. But you can get my wife always told me I got information overload. I do a lot of it. But I like to go to a lot of different sources, and like Eric, I like to go to opposing opinions or views as well. So you can kind of drop in the middle someplace. So here's what's really, and I do agree that I think the metropolitan area and any other area that's having these numbers just skyrocketing, I think there needs to be a total shutdown for a week or two. I mean, supermarkets, everything, give people some fair warning, even though they've been buying like crazy anyway. But I do believe, and I agree with Mayor Baraka, that there needs to be, because people are being hard-headed in Newark and Lakewood and Ocean County is doing the same thing where they're breaking up all these parties and weddings. And so I do believe there needs to be a shutdown of some sort with no movement for a period of time. So here's where I'm going to get you guys' opinion on. So I've been hearing a lot of different things. One, I know they addressed possibly doing which would be crazy, a blanket or universal DNR policy where they don't resuscitate and just don't even waste the time of resuscitating each other, which I think has a lot of lawful problems with it because, your family's not there to make a decision, et cetera, because you can't come in, et cetera. I wanted to get you guys' opinion on that. The second thing I want to get you guys' opinion on is this whole idea I'm hearing of the advantages of salt, that somehow gargling salt water, using salt to wash your hands with as a sanitary item, instead of something that can help you with washing your hands and keep them clean, and that this whole theory about viruses not being able to live in or around salt. So I want to get you guys' take on those two things first. I got a few more, don't worry.
So, Lori, I think that you are well equipped. You and I had a conversation that laid out the very makeup of the COVID virus and why, the structural makeup of it and why it's so important to use soap and hot water to wash your hands for the period of time. Could you explain that again to the audience? Is she still there? Okay.
Sorry about that. I hit mute so you wouldn't get background noise. The coronavirus has a membrane that is made out of this oily substance called phospholipids, and if you it doesn't hold up very well under soap and water, because soap is designed to cut grease, and you've got this oily membrane around the virus, so it attacks that oily membrane, and it breaks the thing apart so that the virus can no longer act to insert its genes into a cell. So soap and water works really well against coronavirus for that reason. Each infective agent is susceptible to different kinds of things. So the coronavirus soap and water works really well. I don't know whether gargling with salt water would do any good or not. I don't know. Again, take your advice on that from the Centers for Disease Control.
But what we can conclude is this: I don't know that it hurts. My question is whether or not it gives a false sense of security by doing it, right? So I don't. That would be, and then I would say exactly what Lori said. I'm looking at the World Health Organization, and I'm looking at the Center for Disease Control, and every time Dr. Fauci speaks, I'm sitting there listening attentively.
Well, okay, so then I got another question. Go ahead.
Well, if somebody wants to do something to ward off bad luck, and it's not going to harm them, if it makes them feel better, if it helps ease their anxiety, I wouldn't take that away from them.
Right.
If somebody has...
Yeah.
If somebody has some ritual that soothes them, and it doesn't increase or decrease their risk of disease, but it soothes their anxiety, I wouldn't interfere with that.
Right, and I think a lot of it comes from ever since this whole thing started with this virus. A lot of this conspiracy theories come from a lot of different areas. So one, even my daughter's 16 years old. She, her and her friends were talking about how this is man-made, because how would it be that on the back of the Lysol can, it mentions that this fights coronavirus. They're hearing there's different forms or different types of coronavirus. That's one. Two, what was the movie? What Happened to Monday? Which was really all in one thing, where it was population control, where every family was only allowed to have one sibling. If they found they had more than one sibling, they would kill them, etc., for population control. And they talked about how China, for many years, been talking about people being on top of each other, and they needed to control the population somehow, some way. And that's why they delayed and letting people know that it was going on. So there's a lot of things that come out of it. But then it also speaks to what's this drink that my wife drinks for your immune system? Emergency. The blue box that people buy from Rite Aid and Walgreens and other places, and she drinks it. And then lastly, the idea of something hot and steamy, even putting your nose over a pot that you're heating water up in the steam, because they're saying that this virus attacks the nose first, then the throat, then goes down to the lungs. So there's a lot of things going around and around and around and around with this whole idea. Have you both heard about those things as well?
I've heard about them all.
I have. And the thing that it lists coronavirus on the back of the Lysol can. There's a lot of different coronaviruses. The coronavirus is an entire family of viruses. So and it's called that because its structure is such that it's got these little protein spikes that stick out of the cell membrane, or not cell membrane, the viral membrane. And so when you take an electron microscope image of coronavirus is it looks like little crowns. You know, crowns have like those like things those spikes that stick up. So that's why it was called coronavirus. So that, you know, there's not all coronaviruses are the same. So it's like, if you think of the coronavirus family as being like the cat family, okay?
Okay.
There's a cat in my house, okay? I am not worried about that cat in my house. I mean, I saw this meme where there was this malevolent-looking house cat saying, well, the chances of your house cat killing you are very low, but not zero. So, but I'm pretty sure that the chances of my house cat killing me are very, very close to zero. On the other hand, some years ago there was a problem because somebody was keeping tigers down in South Jersey, and the tigers were escaping. Mm-hmm. So the COVID-19 is something akin to the tigers getting out.
Got it.
I mean, it's a much more dangerous thing. Yeah, tigers and house cats are both members of the cat family. And tigers, their behavior is very similar to house cats in a lot of ways. But that does not mean that they're the same in terms of dangerousness to a human being.
Got it. We got another caller call in. Caller, go.
Hey, Eric, good morning. Good morning, Darren. Good morning, everyone on the show. I just wanted to get you guys' take in reference to the self-quarantine statement that Trump made over the weekend. And also, Darren, I know you're a Hudson County guy. There was a story on NJ.com that Steve Phillip wants to possibly start laying people off because of the budget situations in the Hudson County area. But also wanted to report today in Orange, we have the mayor over the weekend, Dwayne Warren. We did a Facebook Live posting. We have 54 cases in Orange right now. We're actually doing a emergency management headquarters, a 24-hour operation. And people can contact the mayor at 862-373-0025. We do have our hotline going, city hotline, 973-280-1621, where people can call in. And we're doing a grab and go for the students in Orange. And any more updates, I will call into the show this week, Eric. And do the social distance. But I think the self-quarantine idea, stay away and all that. Murphy's doing the stay-home order right now. I don't think we should do any more. I mean, we should. I mean, because of the quarantines that are going around the country, such as in California. But I just wanted to give you guys an update and your feelings about those type of issues, and have a good day and stay safe, Eric. All right, God bless you, man.
Thank you. God bless you too. We got another call before you guys address that. Caller, go.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? To Darren, those things you were mentioning, right? Those approaches. They're not supposed to necessarily cure any disease. They're supposed to be what people believe to, salt will help to be, they believe to be some kind of expectorant. Sending with the breathing in of the steaming water with the citrus in it, where it will break up mucus in the body where the virus lives and reduce it or break it up so that the virus cannot, doesn't sit. What they say is that by doing that, the virus would, the mucus would not sit on your lungs or sit in your chest, sit in your throat, sit in your nose, and then would either you could spit it out, blow it out, or even something about it would go to your stomach where the, biles and the things in your stomach would break it down so that the virus wouldn't, just essentially making it easier for your body to fight it. So I don't know how true those methods are, but I mean, it sort of makes a little sense. So I'm not going to say don't do it, but that's like, it's not your cure. It's just a thing so that if you're getting, you know how they say 98% of the people that get the virus anyway won't die from it, but, they may suffer or infect other people. So they're saying this is a way of therapeutically approaching keeping the virus under control within your body so that you can either survive it or not give it to other people.
So that's why they're saying, all these like natural remedies are coming out. So as long as it doesn't hurt you, why not try it? Especially if you think you might be exposed, or you know what I mean. So that's what I see about that. But I heard Will just say something about the social distancing, and absolutely, people just stay the hell in the house. Give up, and it's where our government has done us a disservice, right? Instead of, look, if you had that martial law, whatever they want to call it, put your troops on the corners. Listen, stay your ass in the house. Excuse my language on your show, Eric. Apologize for that.
Okay.
But sometimes you just got to say it, man. People that don't get it. If they say this has a 2-week incubation period in the body, right, which within 2 weeks you pretty much know, or you either giving it to people or not. If we had just locked the country down for 2 out of 52 weeks, we'd be done with this by now. Instead of going into a whole month-long process, we'd have found all cases. Then you could have separated them from the population. Then there would have been a second round from anybody they would have quite affected. But within a month and a half, 6 to 8 weeks, you would have probably isolated virtually every case. And we could have moved on from this. At this point, this will go until it naturally dissolves, maybe from environment and changes in season and so forth. So our government has done us a huge disservice by not forcing that. We can force governments out of other countries. How about that? Like, we can go to countries and take them over. But you're telling me we can't stop people from hitting the streets of our own?
Well, we have a constitution.
We found what you call it, in a hole in the ground in Iraq.
Right. But we violated his. But wait. But let's be clear. We violated his rights.
Yes, we did.
Right. But no.
Our president got on TV and said, "You got to leave your country by 8 o'clock on Wednesday, or we coming in."
Yeah.
He said that.
But the question is, the statement is that millions and millions of Americans don't want their rights violated. So in the middle of not wanting their rights violated, you want to be protected. But the thing that it takes to maybe protect you requires you to give something up, right?
And we're selfish. We're not going to do it,
right.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I've been laughing, right, and crying at the same time, I guess, because they always say, like, in a time of need, Americans get together and we help out. But as long as it's not happening to us. See, we'll send money to the Katrina victims from New Jersey to New Orleans because it ain't happening to us. But we don't, when it's happening to all of us right now, this whole nation at one time, nobody will sacrifice. Nobody will just sit their butts down and just stay the hell in the house. And that's ridiculous. And our government needs to make it happen. Simple and plain. And as far as the economy and all of that, first off, 2 things. If a $1 billion company can't hold out for 2 weeks to a month, then either one, they've been lying to us all this time about how successful they are. Remember, up until all of this, stock market was doing great. Everything in the economy was so great. Unemployment was so low. But then all of a sudden, now every company that was doing so great is saying, "Oh my God, I can't survive 2 weeks down. I can't survive a month down." That's somewhere along the line, somebody's been con jobbing us. Right, so we need to investigate that surely throughout all of this, right? Because there's been some kind of gain to it. And then the other thing is, put it all on pause, federal government. Just like you can use the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates or to put money into the economy, to print more money, whatever they want to do. Guess what? Put the same Federal Reserve that backs all those same banks that are the reason why the economy, you're worried about the economy, right? Because it's basically about banks collecting on their money. Like, that's what all of this is about. It's about corporations and companies paying the banks the money they owe them. So if that's the case, you say to the banks, "Pause, y'all. We're going to extend each loan. Instead of them paying money for for March and April, we're going to put that on the back end of the loan. So we're going to extend the loan 2 months so that we can pause everything so people can survive." That's all that is needed to be done.
Right.
Right? And I've done it. I remember having a car note, and when I couldn't pay it, right, I contacted my finance company, and they said, "Okay, we'll put this month's payment on the back end of your payment. You still have to pay the interest, but that's it."
But Lori, you alluded to this earlier, right, where you said, firstly, we have to vote for the government we want, right? So right now, people are talking about what they think should happen, what they'd like to see happen. But the people who are there right now, they're not there to be people focused, to be people centered. They're there to protect the interests of corporations, and that's exactly what they're doing. And my concern is, even in this pain that the majority of Americans are feeling, that they still don't see that. I posted something on my page yesterday, and I'm shocked. It has 137,000 shares. And it just asks a simple question. It says, do you realize that the country just pulled, and it pulled $6.2 trillion out of its rear end without blinking an eye, but said we'd go broke providing health care as a right. So what they deemed to be priority, they took care of, right? Or in the process of taking care of. But that doesn't put the people first. It puts these corporations, as Farrakhan is saying, it's shoring up the economy. It's not taking care of people. And I was watching today on the news, and they were saying this money that folks are going to get is not gonna address anything of any consequence in people's lives.
Hello?
Yeah, we have another caller. Caller, go.
Oh, great. Hi. So this is Paul Montague. I was enjoying your show. So I wanted to call in and get your take on a couple of questions. First question, you were just talking about voting, and I wanted to get your take on how you feel about the governor changing over the North School Board election to next month and saying it's by a mail-in only. Because I know you talk a lot about, people getting the government they want. So do you think that could be voter intimidation, that now I can only vote by mail, so somebody's going to open it up and actually see who it is that I'm voting for? Do you think that will discourage the voters from voting? Or, what do you think about that particular idea?
Hey, Darren, go ahead with that one. I'll give you that one, Darren. Darren, are you there? Okay, then I'll...
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. Yeah, Sheila, how you doing, Sheila? Yeah, so...
Hi.
Interesting. I thought about those same things when it happened, but when I saw that order come out, but my take on voting is so different, because if people as voters, or those that's registered to vote, don't understand the importance of voting, whether it be mail-in, whether it be going to the polls, whether it be... I just think that this is going to give people... I agree with you, Sheila, that's going to give people an excuse, and they'll probably say that they're so intimidated. But we're at the stage now where we've been getting kicked in the butt so long. Why would it even matter if they knew who we vote for? That's just the way I look at it. But will it cause some people to have some caution to the win, and use it as an excuse? Yes, it will happen, but we just got to vote. People just got to vote, but they got to vote their interests. The problem is we keep voting for a party and not voting for people, or voting for a line and not voting our own interests. We voting against our own interests all the time, and that's the problem.
Right. I hear you.
Yeah, I think people will be disenfranchised as a result of the process. But we've been disenfranchised before, and not enough people, when we didn't have this crises, rose up against the disenfranchisement, right? So I think it's going to be business as usual. You'll just have more people disenfranchised. And you'll have, some murmurings out there, but you have to prepare for the problem. And if you're not prepared, if you don't prepare for the problem, when the problem arises, you're ill-equipped to deal with it. And so now here we are. And those who have prepared are those who are in power right now. And so for us to not have prepared all of this time, and then to be concerned now, and I agree with Darren. I think that a lot of the folks who are screaming and hollering about being concerned about this are people who don't vote anyway, or are not involved in the process anyway, right? It just gives them something to complain about right now. You see what I'm saying? Because and mainly because it's nothing they can do about it. And most times people complain about things they can't do anything about because then they don't have to be responsible. You see, which is why, Farrakhan said earlier, see, we can go and give money to people in Katrina and we could take care of people over here and over there, but we walk over the homeless people and we walk over the food insecure people in our own communities. Because see, we could affect change there, right? But that takes some personal responsibility and we're not ready for that yet.
And the last
I'll say one last point to that, and it's part of what Eric is saying there. We're only going to get what we're organized to take. Let me say it again. We're only going to get what we organized to take. We are not organized, and that's our problem. We'll jump on an issue like Farrakhan said. I mean, so eloquently said that. We'll jump on the issue, whether it be local or not even, or statewide or somewhere else, regional, and we'll. For a little while, but then we have short-term memories, as Eric talks about all the time. It would just go right back to normal. I mean, see, this is our problem. It's really no different than what's going on now with this, what's happening with this virus. People aren't taking this serious.
Yeah.
I mean, they still going out and having coronavirus parties. They still congregate in certain areas. So I'm not thinking about this. Guys are still out there selling drugs and shooting each other. What the heck is wrong with these people? That's why they're not just selling drugs, Aaron. They're not just selling drugs. Have you noticed that they're wearing masks and gloves while they're selling the drugs? I'm out here rolling, driving back from the street. Like, how do you know they were standing on the block? They got masks and gloves on. Like, they going, listen. People are just lost, right? It's crazy, like, wow, what people are doing.
Right.
But I only call back to ask one question to Lori. Maybe you can answer this. To your knowledge, does radiation kill the virus? And my reason for asking is you have all these crazy conspiracy people talking about 5G, and it's 5G causing this virus, and I'm like, 5G is radiation, right? Like the fear with the 5G thing was the intense radiation from the signals. So my thing is, if radiation kills the virus, then surely it's not sending out the virus. So I'm just asking, to your knowledge, does radiation kill the virus?
Well, radiation is an awfully big word. I mean, radiation includes everything from microwaves to, X-rays, or, visible light, gamma rays, I mean, it includes a whole bunch of things. When people talk about radiation, they generally mean ionizing radiation, which means that it's something that can cause electrically charged particles to break off of substances. That's why X-rays and so forth can cause cancer, but microwaves wouldn't. I mean, a microwave could cook you, but it won't cause cancer. And even then, the microwave has. I mean, it's like a microwave oven. It has, it would have to heat you up to it was high enough to create a problem. So, I mean, the people who are getting all worried about 5G, and I mean, there's a whole list of things that people that, I up until now thought were pretty smart. They forward all of these conspiracy theory things. They're seemingly intelligent people, but they forward these things. And this puts me in a dilemma. Do I just say nothing? When they forward all this stuff from a questionable source about something that I know is not a serious problem. When they could be trying to spread the word about something that is a real problem. But instead I don't know why it is. Maybe I think it's because the real information is always so complicated, hard to understand, not clear, that it doesn't get people excited enough to click forward.
Can I like to respond? Can I respond to what was just said?
Sure.
Okay, so The question was posed inaccurately, first of all, to just automatically assume that it's a conspiracy theory without doing your due diligence in terms of researching the legitimate connection between 5G radiation and the coronavirus. And to know what that is, it's not just one thing, several different strands of it. And I know better than probably most of y'all that's laughing and being condescending about the question that's going on, because I'm actually dealing with it. And actually dealing with all of those symptoms right now. I know from constantly talking to my doctors. And if you notice, the question that was asked about radiation, and no disrespect to the young lady who just responded, she never did say whether or not radiation cured it. And so I don't even know where that came from. It's just totally inaccurate. But my doctor and her husband is a physician. Both of them have been in agreement with other doctors and saying that they don't even know. The hospitals are overwhelmed because they don't even know what to do, which is why they're not even giving the test out to people as they should. Like I said, for me, for example, I've been to 2 different hospitals as of yet, and they haven't diagnosed me with having COVID-19, but I have every single symptom except for the fever. And then you have people who are asymptomatic at all. So I think that we have to change the conversation to a point where we pose the question, right? But we pose them in a way that we open up the conversation to hear other points of view. And if the concept of a conspiracy was so far left, in a jail system, you wouldn't see situations where people who get convicted for conspiracy actually end up doing more time than an actual just murder, right? So a conspiracy is real. Like, what is it? Just 2 or more people planning to do something. So to the point of the 5G, I think that you probably, in doing your due diligence and research, you will find a lot of legitimate reasons from people who work on towers, some people who deal heavily with cell phones, and a whole lot of information is out there. I think it's just immature, right, to pose the questions and do that into labs, especially when the doctors don't even know what's going on, and especially because you're talking to somebody who's actually living with those symptoms. And I'm going to tell you something, even though I've been to get tested at 2 different hospitals, all of the people that I've been around that was coughing or potentially could have given me these symptoms, none of those people I can tell you have been tested, from the schools that I worked in, to people who I've been around on Champagne, to people who actually came to even visit me in my house. Everywhere I went for the last couple of months, everyone was coughing, and none of those people had any tests. None of those people had cold. So we have a huge populace of people who probably could be any of you guys right now who could have it and just don't have any symptoms, because if you don't have every single last symptom, they won't even give you a test. Now, I think that we have to change the conversation where it's more inclusive of different people, different walks of life, different ideas. And we can debate the ideas, but at the same time, you know, be a little bit more equitable in terms of the conversation.
So Sheila, let me ask you a question. Sheila, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
So in these testing centers that they have, these drive-through testing centers, they say if you are presenting with symptoms, then show up at the testing centers. Have you shown up at the testing center and been tested?
Yeah, so the first one I went to was East Orange, because the other ones you needed you needed a couple things to get an appointment. I didn't want an appointment, so when I heard that General Hospital was the first one that had the walk-in that I knew about, the urban I want to say Urban Center, I think that was the first one I went to. They ran out of tests. I went to General Hospital. They said that they did the test, but even though I had all the symptoms, they still didn't literally give me the test. Through the kit, because number one, they were very limited on the kit.
Okay.
And because I didn't have a fever, but I had every other symptom, so they allowed me to cough in the cup and sent it out for testing. That has been several days ago. I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
So if I wasn't having any symptoms, I would be around everybody right now, not self-quarantining, giving it to everybody like somebody gave it to me.
Right.
And then I went to the hospital because what they're saying is true about because I've been doing everything. I've just been doing the research on my own, and if you do, I've been doing the steam therapy with the tea tree oil and the eucalyptus, and it does help to break up the mucus. Because what happened, because I didn't know it does. It starts to affect your lungs. And my back was hurting. My lungs were on fire. I went to the hospital. They said that I was showing symptoms of pneumonia, but yet and still they didn't give me an X-ray. Why didn't they give me an X-ray? Now, see, when you think about the answer to what that question could potentially be, you can't discount radiation being a part. And again, if you look deeply into the effect, the negative effect of 5G, right, it does cause problems with the upper respiratory system. Not that. So again, they didn't do anything. You know, I've had pneumonia before. It was like 100 years ago. But when I went there before, same hospital, they gave me an X-ray, hooked me up to an IV, got me better before they sent me home. I had to stay overnight. Now this time I have quote unquote pneumonia type symptoms, but no X-ray, no nothing. They just gave me, they checked my chest, they gave me some antibiotics and sent me home. The doctors don't know. So, and let me say that again, because that's a very powerful statement. The doctors don't know. Okay. They're conferencing with each other every day to try to compare notes from far and wide to see what's going on, what's their experiences, what are they finding. My doctor told me specifically that even the medical journals, because I called to ask her about a couple of medical journal information that I found. She told me, she said, Sheila, the medical journal, she said, it's garbage. She said, no one has prepared us this. She said, we're literally conferencing every day, far and wide, trying to find out what works, what doesn't work, what is working, what's having an effect. And she said, even when they find that out, they immediately find out that what worked on these two people may not work on the next people. So again, we just have to include make the conversation more inclusive to act like we don't know because we don't, and the doctors don't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, listen.
So that's really why I asked the question, because I did not know. I asked the question first. I did not ask the question about whether or not 5G was harm to your respiratory system. I asked, does it cause or kill the virus? If it was known to, in other words, people are trying to say we're not just having respiratory problems. What we're concerned with right now is an outbreak of a disease that is attacking the respiratory system of people. So I am asking, does 5G either cause the germ that is affecting people's respiratory system, or does it kill it? And if she doesn't know
but you're being assumptive that it is a germ. And what I'm saying right now, that's in a
coronavirus is a germ.
What?
I'm not talking about
the coronavirus has been around.
I am glad you are feeling well, but I am not talking about what does 5G affect the respiratory system. I am asking, what does 5G and the radiation caused by it have to do with the coronavirus? Now, all the other side of it, I didn't know.
So wait a minute, guys. Both of you guys for a second. No. I'm not going to let you. I literally sat silent for 5 minutes. So what I want to ask now, Lori, is these are the kinds of conversations that are taking place all over the place, and people just want to know, right? They want to know. Listen, look. If I was Sheila, I'd want to know. If I'm going to the hospital and I'm going to be tested and they're sending me home and they ran out of tests and my back is burning, I want to know. And then I'm searching for information wherever I can get it. Right? Now, I know that you're not a doctor, but I know you've done extensive research for medical journals over the last, nearly 20 some years? So there's some insight that you can offer, right, based on having listened to some of this stuff.
Well, the insight that I can tell you is that the caller is frightened and angry, and I think she's fully within her rights to be frightened and angry. I mean,
frightened and angry. I'm not frightened and angry. I'm actually well. I've made myself well from the therapies and things that I have researched and found out. And that pain therapy was one. Another thing that I've researched on my own, and it's very simple, using a hair dryer, because the virus it stays in the coolest part of your body.
So here's the question that I wait, Sheila, before you, because it's important, right? Because
y'all got your own idea. I'm gonna let y'all.
No. It's not about my idea. But when you talk about things that you're trying, what sources are you going to get this information that's leading you down these paths?
What do you mean, what sources?
Well, so if I were to
doctor,
say, if I come on the
my
show,
doctor has put me on an antibiotic. I'm sure that's been effective.
Right.
I feel 50%. I just started everything 2 days ago, and I feel 50% better than I felt 2 days ago.
I'm glad to hear that.
I couldn't even walk. So I think that what I'm doing is effective. And, I think that just sharing different opinions shouldn't constitute that a person is angry. And I think that...
well, I wouldn't take it personally. Right. So what I'm saying is this, though. I think that we have to be really careful about anecdotal things. So I might try something here in my house and it works for me, and so I got to be careful in saying that I did this thing and it worked for me, as opposed to giving the impression that this is something that may work, right? And that's why I'm asking. So if what your doctor's recommended versus what you're doing based on what you've read, and then the sources that you've gone to get that information, and because putting those links to those sources in the thread, so that people, when they in the show, can go and read those sources, and then they can make decisions for themselves. So I'm not saying that we have all the answers here. I'm simply saying I want to ferret it out. Right, so if you read something somewhere that said using a hairdryer does something, I'm simply saying, well, okay, where'd that source come from? I'm not discrediting the source.
Okay, I can share that.
Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not discrediting it or promoting it. I'm simply saying share it, so that we can all look at it, right? And then we can discuss it, because I think you're right in a lot of respects. I'm watching, and we talked about this at the beginning of the show. This is all dynamic. Dr. Fauci says one thing one day based on information he has, and then comes back and says another thing another day. But to say also, because you said this, that the journals should be thrown out. I think that those journals are the basis. Right? There has to be some...
I never said that.
I thought that's what I heard you say.
I would never say that.
No, I thought that's what you said the doctor said. I thought that's what you said.
I said the doctor said that the medical journals, and I quote what she said. She said the medical journals, in terms of dealing with this situation, is crap. And I'm sure you do, but just for confirmation, you know that the coronavirus and COVID-19 is not the same thing, right? And this question is specifically posed to the person who was talking earlier.
Lori?
Yeah. Coronavirus is a whole family of viruses.
Right.
They've been known for a long time.
Let her finish.
Okay. It would be like if, we know all about the cat family, okay? There's lions, there's tigers, there's, house cats, there's pumas, there's all these different cats, okay? Well, what if, one day you were in like a tropical rainforest, very, very thick tropical rainforest, and you suddenly come across a cat a species of cat that you've never seen before. You would know that it was a cat, because of how its body was put together and so forth. But it would be a new cat. So this coronavirus that we're dealing with now is a member of the coronavirus family. It's just a type that we've not seen before, and it's very similar to one that had been identified as being spread in bats, which is a very bad sign, because bats. Well, first of all, bats are cool, but don't touch them. And stay away from them. Keep your social distance from bats, because they're mammals, which means that it's easier for a virus to jump from one mammal to another than it is for a virus to jump from, say, a reptile to just because of more similarity in the proteins on the outside of our cells. So the other thing about bats is that they live in large colonies, so they share their infectious diseases with each other. They don't social distance at all. The other thing is when bats fly, they develop a very high body temperature, So this means that a virus that is adapted to living in bats is going to, if it does get into humans, it's going to be hard to fight because if we get a fever, it doesn't bother it.
Yeah, again, I know that that's some mainstream information that has been circulating, but again, there's been some debate around whether or not this particular strand even derives from a bat.
I'm not saying whether it came initially from a bat. I'm saying it is almost identical to one that has been known to be in bats.
Yeah, but if people don't know, what you said kind of insinuated it. That's all I was trying to make clear.
Well, it may have come from a bat to another species and then to humans. That's the most likely theory.
All right. Well, Sheila, listen, I hope you feel better. I thank you for calling.
I do. I wasn't even able to talk. I do. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for calling and sharing. One of the big challenges, and it was interesting to hear the progression of Sheila's attempt to get herself taken care of, right? Which is frightening. So you develop some symptoms, and as we're speaking, I just got a text message from my family. My older sister, who works at the VA hospital there in Orange, right, was just sent home with a temperature of 102, and has all of the symptoms of. So anyway, so you have these symptoms. You go. Because normally, if you don't feel well, you go to the doctor, right? But now you go to the doctor, and there are these other steps that you have to take, and oftentimes what they're doing, and I think, Lori, correct me if I'm wrong, or at least your perspective of it, is because these hospitals are experiencing this surge, right? And because they're so overwhelmed, right? And they're underprepared in terms of PPEs, in terms of staff, in terms of ventilators, all these other kinds of things. They want to, it almost seems that they want to have the most critical people in the hospital first, right? And then work down the ladder from there. And so if you come in and don't present as critical, they're trying to clear a way for the person that they know is getting ready to come in there critical based on the data models that they're looking at.
Now, in medicine, there's a word triage. It comes from the French meaning to sort, and it came from the word triage came from military medicine. When you had people who were injured on the battlefield, you would sort them into categories. There were people who were mortally wounded that they were not going to get better no matter what you did. You would just maybe give them some painkiller and let them die. Then there were the people who were so lightly wounded that you could worry about treating them later. Then there was the category of people who were wounded so badly that they needed immediate life-saving care and would die without it. Those are the people you have to see first. Okay? Wow. So, so this concept of triage is important in emergency room medicine as well. I mean, you come in with somebody who's having, they're having a cardiac arrest, they get seen first. People whose problems seem to be less pressing and less immediately life-threatening, they can wait. I mean, that's the whole concept of triage. So if you are not exhibiting all of these signs of coronavirus, and if you don't meet the full case definition of a coronavirus-like illness, then if there's not enough tests to go around, then they might not give one to you, because the only thing that a test does is give you data. Right. The test doesn't cure anything. So it's like when women get mammograms, the mammogram does not cure cancer. The most that the mammogram can do is reveal a cancer that already exists. It doesn't prevent it. It doesn't cure it. So, and now the other thing that the caller's experience just tells me, one fact about geography is that she doesn't live in Germany. In Germany, they're testing a lot more people. And in the United States, they're not, because we don't have, we have a lot fewer tests. So in Germany, I guess they were better prepared for this. So they're testing a lot more people. They're finding a lot of cases of coronavirus infection in people who don't have any symptoms or who are only mildly ill. So because they were finding these cases, this meant that the number of known cases was skewed toward they were finding a lot more mild cases. So the case fatality rate, which is the number of deaths divided by the total number of known cases, is much lower in Germany than it is in Italy. So people were saying, well, what is it that the Germans are doing better at treating this disease? And it's like, no, they're not. They're not doing any better at treating it. They're just finding more mild cases. So this is I think this is something that statisticians call ascertainment bias, where you look for more of something, you find more of it, and that doesn't mean that the rate has gone up or down. It just means that the number of cases that you know about is different.
Right.
Gotcha. Now, Lori, questions for you. Eric kind of segued into one of my final questions was for you, or at least your perspective on it, and Eric, you should chime in too. They were talking to Dr. Fauci about peak versus surge. I heard Eric mention the surge. And it appears one will definitely overlap the other one, and they was trying to get a perspective on what's I use a word that's probably not in the dictionary, the guesstimated amount of time that we'll be going through this, considering that we'll be coming a few months in a little while, we'll be right back into flu season again, when the fall will be there again. What's your take on peak versus the surge? When do you think this thing will peak, in your estimation, or will keep surging? I mean, what's your take on it?
Well, I can explain what these things mean. I mean, I can get, I'm guessing, because I didn't hear what he said exactly. By the surge in cases, I think he means when the number of cases that are known about goes up very sharply. So if you look at the expected curve, it starts off kind of flat, and then all of a sudden it becomes very vertical very fast because it's an exponential growth. And then so that it's going to be going off. At some point, it's going to level off. I mean, normally, what you'd expect when you have an epidemic going through a naive population, or an epidemic going through any population, actually, is that the number of there's something called the basic reproduction rate, which is also called the R naught. A naught means zero, and it's written as an R with a subscript 0. And the basic reproduction rate, or R naught, is the number of new cases that each existing case will generate. So the R naught for a disease is going to change over the course of the disease, because the R naught depends on circumstances, and it depends on such things as how close people live together. It depends on, for something like the viruses that cause the common cold and so forth. They tend to be spread more easily in the winter in the northern hemisphere, and there's one theory that it's which I think is a good one, is that the fact that our houses are so dry, and our office buildings and so forth and classrooms are so dry, they actually found that if you kept the humidity high, you had fewer people out with the flu. I don't know if that applies to coronavirus.
Gotcha.
So, I don't know if coronavirus is more or less likely to break down in high versus low, humidity. So, I don't know. This is something I'm interested in finding out. So, anyway, during the early phase of an epidemic, an infected person will spread it to a lot more people, because there's a lot more people who can catch it. So the R naught is going to be higher. And then After just about everybody's already immune to it, the R naught will drop below 1. And at that point, the thing sputters out.
Wow. That's deep. I'm so nervous because of our density. We live on top of each other in these urban settings. And when you have people that's going to be hard-headed and not listening, I just don't know how we get through this without actually having some type of total quarantine for a week or two or some period of time.
Darren, if I could just say one thing, so you're right in your concern because, again, this is only Schiller's hypothesis, right? I'm definitely not a doctor. But what I'm noticing in both situations with the hospitals, it appears as though that they're trying to just fast-track people out. And that creates a dangerous situation, too. Because if I'm fast-tracking people out, and this is the metaphor that just was used about a mammogram. If I feel a lump inside my breast, then yes, the next step should be to have a mammogram done. But if I feel a lump inside the breast and I say, okay, I'm just going to give you an antibiotic and send you home, you're setting up a very dangerous situation. So many of those people who left that hospital actually had COVID-19. This is not the flu season that people just happen to have. No, these people are up there with upper respiratory situations. Almost everybody that was there were hundreds of people. They all had identical situations. And they barely tested anybody. They did it like a factory lineup. They did the very bare minimum. They got people out. So all of those people who went out, those cases now, which I'm sure a lot, like myself, were a case. But guess what? Now, if I wasn't doing what I need to do for myself, and I was just popping over to people's houses randomly, like, oh, I don't have it. The hospital said I was fine. But guess what? Then I'm exposing so many other people now. And that's what's going on. So there's people around here right now who are asymptomatic, and they're just, passing it around. And why wouldn't the hospitals want to do that? Like, again, how do you have a person come in the hospital where even if it's not COVID-19, you have, I'm sorry.
Sheila, I'm just curious. I know they let you go and they were letting other people go without giving them the specific test, but were they telling those people that they should at least self-quarantine for a period of time?
Who's speaking right now? Is this Farrakhan?
Did they tell y'all to self-quarantine, or did they just say, okay, they did whatever, like you said, you spit in a cup or something? Did they just say we're going to take this and okay, go about your life, or did they give you guys specific instructions to keep yourselves and other people safe in the process?
No, that wasn't fresh. It was just like, you're fine, your vitals are fine, so I'm going to get... Matter of fact,
that's pretty dangerous, like you said. Yeah. What if they do that?
But, everybody knows that they should be quarantined, and I think it's a very small portion of people who are not. And we know that we're going to have that. We know the culture and community where we live, right? But, I think that most people are attempting to self-quarantine. But what I'm saying is I was self-quarantining when I got these symptoms. You understand where I'm coming from?
No, but I do understand Farrakhan's point. Listen, we're almost out of time, but I do understand Farrakhan's point. I think that at the point that you're at the hospital, if you're telling us that you showed up at the hospital because you had enough symptoms to believe that you may have had the coronavirus and you went there to be tested, and then upon them dismissing you, they didn't impress upon you the importance of self-quarantining. And to tell you, because look, it just came across my my news feed that Benjamin Netanyahu, because he was exposed to one of his staff members who was tested positive for coronavirus, has now self-quarantined for 14 days. So if you're telling me that leaving the hospital, they didn't suggest to you that, these are the things that you should look for now, right? If it escalates to this point, then do this. But in the meantime, self-quarantine for a period of 14 days. If they didn't give you that information, that concerns me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
have they checked up with you, Sheila? Have they checked up with you? Have they checked up with you? Has anyone from the hospital called you to see if you were doing better or worse?
Well, I don't.
Like my doctor.
Right. I don't. Right. So I don't
If
need.
I go to my doctor and say I'm sick,
Go ahead. Finish,
and I go
Farrakhan.
to the hospital,
Right.
my doctor will call me about 2 or 3 days later and say, "Hey, how you making out at the ER, to the office or whatever?" Has anybody contacted you and said, "How are you doing?"
No, and I've been calling my doctor every day, and she calls me back hours later. Like, I'm just going to say this, like, because it just seems like what I'm saying is really not, like, maybe y'all cannot see it like I can see it because I was actually there. But it's like a factory, it's like hundreds of people coming out. Like, there's literally 10, right? And they don't have enough bodies, enough more space to store the bodies, but they have 10.
Right.
So they're trying to get people out of there.
Right.
It's a mad asylum, and I'm just saying the epidemic is far worse than we realize.
Right.
And that's why I believe that's why they're not testing, and they want to keep the numbers as low as possible.
Okay. Well, listen, guys. Thanks for the call, Sheila. I'm glad you're feeling better. Please continue to check, and I hope all goes well. When I get off the phone, I got to call my sister and check in on her. And for all of you guys who are listening, I don't know what the, look, even this, and I gotta say this because it popped up. Somebody tagged me in it. So you have the deputy mayor of the city of Newark who's out and about in a car, and he's got a N95 mask on, and his message to people as he's out and about is stay home. And so I think that the best way that you can deliver that message about staying home is to stay home, right? But when you're out and you're telling other people to stay home on Facebook Live, I think that that's kind of
food or something though, Eric. All right, giving out the ShopRite cards and stuff. So he's an essential worker. You gotta let him do that. You gotta let him.
Well, I think that listen, I think that you got to be really careful. I think that there are a lot of impressionable people. There are a lot of mixed messages going out right now, right? And when we talk about the need to have essential people, we have to be clear about what that means. What it means. Because if we're saying that you can be asymptomatic for 14 days and you can spread it, we gotta tighten up.
That was my argument about the hillside.
But my point is, we gotta tighten up what essential is. But all I'm saying is, I don't want to talk over you. Right. We have to.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so we definitely have to do that because there's some issues. If you want to feed people, and that's what this city is trying to do. So I understand why he's out, but maybe he needs to present it in a certain way.
So here's the question for me, and I just got to ask the question, right? So, and I even asked the question of my brother, right? He works for the Urban League, and they had boxes of stuff, and they had people out there, and they were handing out things. So my thing is, folks are working in silos. Maybe instead of working in silos, you could work collectively. So I'm just saying, if the Urban League was already out there and they were handing out food, can you give the Urban League the cards to go hand out as well? Since they're already out there.
The handout of cards are probably associated to the election, so.
Right, but my point to you is this, that, yeah, and Sheila, I do agree with that too, right? So in the middle of this stuff, you have politics happening, and we can't ignore that. Right, and so we have to determine, I think, what essential is, and we have to push back, and we can't let people self-determine that they're essential, because they to me are as hazardous as the folks who are having these corona parties. See, if you're going to allow people to determine whether they're essential or not, we can't do that. It has to be more serious than this.
Yeah, you're right. And that's why when I had put up the post about the barber thing, and the police officers and the councilman from Hillside was debating and arguing with me, I'm like, I don't know what.
Good afternoon, Newark residents. Due to the impact of COVID-19, we are canceling bulk and yard waste collection in the entire city until further notice, as it is a non-essential service. Regular household waste and recyclables collection will continue. If you have any questions,
it's a robocall.
973-733-0311.
Or is that mine?
No. That robocall came through here. Yeah, I get the city. I get the city robocalls, and so I didn't know whether that was a caller or what. So I took it. Anyway, guys, there's a lot for us to continue to talk about, and I'm sorry we ran out of time, but we gotta now decide what's essential. Who's deciding? Can I decide that I'm essential? Can I decide right now that if I have money to be able to give to, or food to give to food insecure people, that I'm now essential and I can go outside? Can I decide that? Should I be deciding that?
No, you shouldn't. Stay in the house, as we all should.
Right. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Last point, Eric. It's funny you say that because at the beginning of this situation, GameStop told their associates that if anybody asks them whether they still open, to tell them that they are an essential employer and that's why they're open. They even had a letter to back it up. Now, since then, I think GameStop been forced to shut down, but they took their own position on it. They took their own position.
Yeah. We gotta, we have to really look and see. Because what I'm looking at right now, Farrakhan, and I understand the reason you gave for him being out there, doesn't make him essential. If I go down the list that the governor listed of essential, the question is, does he fit in there? And if people do fit in there, should they now, based on what's occurring, modify that list of essential? Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't know that should be a list that stands forever. I think that it should change as circumstances change. Right? And we should be narrowing down, if necessary, what essential really means. But there are too many people out there.
You're correct.
There are too many people out there with masks on. Too many people with masks on, delivering food. And I'm not saying, because I know people can be in a thread saying, well, Eric, people need food. I'm not saying that they don't need food. And that's a whole nother issue that we should have been addressing before this, and we didn't. Right? So, yes, you do have a lot of folks who are out there who are food insecure. But I think that we need to be investigating then a safer way to address that issue. But to have everybody decide on their own that because they want to take care of the food insecure people, they're going to get in their cars and go Facebook Live is irresponsible. And somebody needs to look into that too. Listen, thank you guys for tuning in. Darren, Lori, you are, I really appreciate the, the time that you spend, and I call on you based on the experience you've had doing research and your writings and all of those things. And guys, once again, Lori Endicott Thomas is the author of No More Measles, along with a bunch of other books. And please go Google her, right? Find out the books that she has. Go Google her and support her. Buy her books. No More Measles is a great book. I read it. Enjoyed it. Be safe. If you don't have to go out, don't. Save somebody else's life if you're not willing to save your own. Thanks for tuning in, guys.